he copied everything he could and emailed it to himself using her device. By then, he had downed 6 beers and smoked half a pack of cigarettes, grinding them out on her face in the bottom of the dish. He looked outside and saw that the sun had already started to rise. Soon, he thought, she would be up and would know that he had left. He figured she would be up in about an hour or two, so he grabbed his shotgun, made sure it was loaded, and locked both locks on his door. Then he laid back down on the couch with the shotgun next to him and tried to get some sleep. Allison woke up and looked at the clock on the nightstand next to Jake's bed. She saw it was 8:30, so she rolled out of bed and went to the bathroom to clean up. Jake and the others began to stir and were up by the time she got out of the bathroom. Jake threw on a robe and looked at Allison. "Do you want to go downstairs and get some breakfast started?" he asked. "Mark will probably want some coffee, assuming he's waking up." "Yeah, sure," she said. She tossed on a robe, padded downstairs in her bare feet, and went into the kitchen. She started a pot of coffee and walked into the living room to wake up her husband. Then she realized with a start that he wasn't there. The Afghan she had put over him was thrown back, and his shoes were gone. She ran around the first floor, thinking that perhaps he was in the bathroom, but he wasn't there. Looking out the front window, she realized their car was gone. She turned around and saw his ring sitting on her purse, which was lying on its side on the coffee table. "Oh," she gasped. She ran upstairs, yelling. Jake stopped her as she ran into the master bedroom. "What's wrong?" "He's gone," she said. "What do you mean, gone?" "He's gone, goddammit," she yelled. "He must have woken up in the middle of the night and left. He took the car and left his wedding ring. You better call him and see if you can track him down. Tell him he needs to come pick you up." "Okay," she said, running back downstairs. She put Mark's ring in her purse and looked for her phone, but it wasn't there. She was certain she had brought it with her last night. She never went anywhere without it. By then, Jake was downstairs. "My phone is gone." "That's okay. Use the house phone." "You don't understand. I never go anywhere without it. It's full of texts along with the pictures and videos you sent to me. If he has it, he's probably seen them. Don't worry about it. What we need to do is get him over here. The boys and I will take things over from there. Now call him." Allison nodded her head and picked up the phone in Jake's living room. She nervously dialed Mark's cell phone, hoping he would answer. "Hello," Mark said when he answered. He sounded as if he had just woken up. "Mark, sweetie, it's me." "The hell you want?" he growled. Allison recoiled. He had never spoken to her like that before. She realized he must be super pissed. "Mark, honey, you weren't here when I got up, and I was worried about you. Are you all right?" "What the hell do you care, witch?" "Sweetheart, I need you to come pick me up at Jake's house," she said. "Could you do that for me, pretty please?" Mark laughed out loud. "Screw you," he snarled. "I may have been clueless yesterday, but I'm not anymore, and you don't ever get to call me sweetheart or honey or anything else ever again." "Mark, please don't be angry with me," she pleaded. "I do love you." "Yeah, right, witch. Tell me another one." "Mark, we need to talk." "Damn right we do." "Then I need you to come to Jake's and pick me up," she said. "We can talk about this on the way back home." "Wrong answer, witch," he said, causing her to recoil yet again. "There's no way in hell I'm going over there. If you want to come home, you can walk or call an Uber. The only thing we have to talk about is how we're going to split everything up." "What do you mean, split everything up?" she asked. "That's what usually happens in a divorce, witch." "I don't want a divorce. Please, can't we get through this? I didn't want to be drugged and cucked either. Just get your bum home if you feel the need to talk. But I'm warning you, don't let Jake or any of those others bring you home. If any of them step foot in my house, I'll blow their heads off, so help me God. Do you understand me, witch?" "Oh, okay, I'll call an Uber. Do that, and make sure you either have cash or your ATM card. Why? She asked. Because your credit card doesn't work anymore. Why doesn't my credit card work anymore? Because I cancelled it last night. Oh, she quietly said. By the way, do you happen to know where my phone is? Yeah, it's here on the coffee table, Mark said. Got an interesting collection of pictures and video, by the way. Now I know what you and Jake have been doing these last 3 months or so when you claim to be on business trips. They'll really help my divorce case. Oh my God, she whispered. Mark, I'm really very sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Shut up, and save your worthless excuses for someone who gives a damn, he said. Now, if you want to come and talk to me, do it now while you can, and come alone. I'll be there, Mark, she said, ending the call and putting the phone down. She looked at Jake. Well? Jake asked. He's not coming, she said. I need to go there and talk to him. All right, we'll take you then. She shook her head. No, he's armed, and he said if any of you show up, he'd kill you. I think he really means it. You didn't hear him. I've never heard him so angry in my life. Jake thought for a moment, then went into his study. He came back out with a syringe in his hand. Here's what we do then. Put this in your purse. You call an Uber, and we'll follow you to your place. The first chance you get, you pull the cap off and inject it into his arm. All of it. Then you call me. We'll be close by. We'll come and pick him up and put him in the trunk of my car. What is that? She asked. It's just a special concoction I had made up for him, Jake said. Some narcotics, heroin, and something to put him out. It acts pretty fast. Don't worry, it won't hurt him. Just stick him with it, and when he's out, you call me. Got it? He handed her the syringe and watched as she carefully put it into her purse. Okay, she said. Just promise me you won't hurt him. We'll do our best, right, boys, he added, looking at the 3 men who laughed. He turned back to Allison. Go ahead, call for your ride. She arranged for an Uber driver to pick her up in a half hour and went back upstairs to finish getting ready. When the driver arrived, she got in the car and left. Jake and his 3 friends got into his car and followed Allison, parking about a block away. None of them took note of the white van parked on the street across from Jake's house. A few minutes after he spoke to Allison, Mark's phone rang again. He saw it was RK, so he answered. What's up? He asked. Just wanted to let you know my boys picked up a conversation between your wife and her accomplices, RK said. What? Mark asked. The wonders of modern technology, my friend, he said. You'd be amazed at what we can do these days with a parabolic microphone. Anyway, your wife is getting an Uber, and her buddies are going to follow behind. They plan on dosing you with something and then kidnapping you. Whatever it is, it's in her purse. Apparently, she's going to hit you with it as soon as she gets a chance. My boys will follow Jake and his crew when they leave. Damn, Mark said. Yeah, RK said. Anyway, just be careful. I'll text you when they leave. Turn on the surveillance gear when she gets there, and I'll monitor it. I'm just down the street. I'll call the cops when the time comes. Just be ready. Okay, thanks. He waited and got the text about a half hour later. On the move. Showtime, Mark said to himself. He knew he had about 20 minutes or so before they arrived, so he stashed the shotgun where he knew Allison wouldn't spot it right off and turned the surveillance gear on. He went into the kitchen and grabbed a plastic Ziploc bag for the syringe and a tissue. He saw the Uber pull up in front of his house and watched as Allison paid the driver and got out of the car. She seemed exceptionally nervous and kept her hand on her purse, which was slung over her left shoulder. He hit the switch to turn on the fireplace and watched as the pictures and her dress started to catch on fire. She walked to the door and slowly opened it. She gasped as she walked in and smelled the cigarette smoke. Mark really didn't care. Her eyes grew wide when she saw the destroyed portrait over the fireplace and got even wider when she looked at her dress and photos now turning to ash. "My wedding dress," she exclaimed. "Our pictures." "Mark, why are you doing this?" Tears were falling down her face, but he was unmoved. "I wanted you to see for yourself what your actions have done to us." She looked at the beer bottles and cigarette butts in her beloved candy dish. "I thought you had a low tolerance for alcohol, and I never knew you smoked." "I used to smoke but quit. As for the other, the truth is, I get downright mean when I get drunk. The last time I got really drunk, I nearly killed a man with my bare hands, a much bigger man than me, by the way. I made a choice to never get drunk again, just like you made a choice to become Jake's witch." "Oh my God, Mark, what have I done? You tell me. What the hell happened to you? You used to be the sweetest, kindest, most level-headed person I ever knew. Did you overdose on stupid pills? Did Jake hit you with a Martian 3.0 for Ray? Since when have you snorted cocaine? And who are all these men you've been screwing?" "Clients, mostly," she said quietly. "Jake made me." "Oh, terrific. You know your actions could put Marcus Financial out of business. Tell me, how long have you wanted to drug me and assault me in the rear? Was that your idea, or is that something Jake put you up to?" She looked at him, shocked. "I never?" she began before Mark cut her off. "Shut the hell up," he said, pulling out his phone. He played the video and let her hear herself and her accomplices talk as they stood over him. Her face turned white as she heard her own words. "How did you get that?" she asked. "It doesn't matter," he said. "What's important is that David and the members of the board now have this video. The police will have it, too. Not only are we getting divorced, but if I have my way, you'll be in prison for a very long time. I just want to know why." "You don't understand," she said. "It's a long story. Maybe you can tell me one day when I'm not so inclined to wring your scrawny neck," Mark said. He watched her as she started to open her purse, but before she could do anything, he ripped it off her shoulder and dumped the contents on the coffee table. He saw the syringe filled with a dark liquid and picked it up with the tissue he had set aside for that purpose. "Is this what you had planned for me?" he asked. "Do you even know what this is?" "Not exactly." "Not exactly," he asked sarcastically. "You mean to tell me you were going to inject this into me without any clue what it really is or what it could do? You're one sick witch, you know that. Did Jake tell you to do this?" She nodded her head. "Yes," she said quietly. "I suppose if Jake told you to shove a red-hot poker up your bum, you'd do that too, wouldn't you? Let me guess, you're supposed to inject this into me, then call him when I'm down so he can come kidnap me. Am I right?" Ashamed, she nodded her head. "Pretty much." "All right, here's what we're going to do. You're going to call Jake. Put it on speaker so I can hear both sides. You're going to tell Jake you did what he asked. I'll take it from there. Don't you dare tell him I'm waiting for him, got it? You want me to set him up?" "Yes." "Any questions?" She shook her head. "No," she said. "I understand." "Good. Now do it, and no tricks." Mark watched as she called and put the phone on speaker. "Jake, it's me, Ally. It's done. Hune's out. Good girl. We'll be right there." She ended the call and looked at Mark. "He's going to kill me when he sees you're not really down and out. Tough witch. Remember, no signals, nothing to let him know the truth, otherwise I may kill you myself." He waited for Jake to come inside while lounging in a recliner. He closed his eyes, leaving them slightly open so he could see, and watched Jake and his 3 friends through the window. Jake went to the door and let himself in. He took a moment to survey the mess before moving closer to Mark. "You did well," he said to Allison. "Now we're going to put him in the trunk." Before Jake could touch Mark, he opened his eyes. Jake reached down to pick him up. Mark raised a hand and gave Jake a hard blow to the throat before Jake could respond. As Jake pulled back, Mark got to his feet. After giving a brief shake of his head, Mark moved quickly and gave him a forceful kick to the crotch. The other three entered the building to assist Jake, but RK's men apprehended them after trailing them onto Mark's land. Jake was writhing in agony and on his knees. Mark took his hunting knife and slipped behind him. He knelt, put the knife at Jake's throat and grabbed his hair, pulling his head upward. "Make your peace with God, Aoli," said Mark, "because I'm going to cut your head off." Allison flinched in terror, and Jake pissed in his pants. She said to herself, "Who is this monster?" Jake heard RK's voice from the door and started to press the knife against his throat. RK called out, "Sergeant R," to grab everyone's attention. "Don't do it. Drop the knife. Police are on their way." Mark yelled, "This dog deserves to die." RK was in front of Jake by then, down on one knee. "Yes, he's a piece of shit, and he deserves to die, my friend," RK replied. "But not at your hand. Listen to me, Mark. If you kill him, he'll feel nothing ever again. He'll turn to dust in his grave, but you'll end up in prison. You deserve your revenge, but what kind of revenge is that? This isn't Iraq, buddy. Let the authorities do their job. Please, I'm asking you as a friend. Put the knife down and let the police take him in. He'll pay for what he's done. They all will." Before answering, Mark gave his friend a minute's glance. Jake was trembling in fear for his life, and he knew it. With deliberate movement, he withdrew the knife from Jake's throat and rose to his feet. He looked down and saw Jake in tears. RK zip-tied Jake's hands behind his back, turned him over, and had him lie face down on the floor. RK turned to face Allison and instructed her to lie face down on the floor with her hands behind her back. Compliant, she peered into the fireplace while RK held her hands in place. She watched as a photo of herself and Mark burned and turned to ash, hot tears streaming down her face. Sitting on the couch, Mark observed RK ensuring Allison and Jake were safe. The remaining three were situated in the front yard, also protected by RK's men. As the police cruisers came to a stop in front of Mark's house, they could hear their sirens. RK said, "Hand me your phone. I'll go talk to the police before they come inside." With a nod, Mark handed RK his phone. Jake raised his head and looked at Mark as RK walked away. At last, his smugness vanished. Apparently, it was just the realization that he was going to die. "You know, my father always did love you more than he did me," Jake replied. Mark gave a headshake. "That's not true," Mark corrected Jake. "He always hoped you would mature enough to step into his shoes." "One day, would you really have cut my head off?" replied Jake. Mark retorted, "I guess we'll never know now, will we? But I guarantee you, where you're going, you'll be surrounded by people who won't hesitate the way I did. And I promise, if you ever come after me like this again, I won't hesitate either." Jake remained silent, resting his head back on the ground. After surveying the situation, 3 sizable police officers entered the home and took Jake and Allison away. They marched them outside to the cruisers after reading them their Miranda rights. After glancing at the syringe in its plastic bag that was resting on the coffee table, one of the officers picked it up. He asked Mark, "Is this what they plan to use on you?" "That's right," he replied. As he recorded Mark's entire statement, the officer took notes. About 30 minutes later, he turned to face Mark. "You were lucky, you know that, don't you?" asked the man. "No, my fellow Marine had my back," the officer said with a nod of his head. "Semper Fi," the officer shook Mark's hand and said. "Aura," was Mark's reply. RK entered the front room and took a seat on the couch after they had left. He pointed to the beer bottles and said, "You got another one of those?" "I think I have 1 or 2 left." "Kind of early for this, don't you think?" RK said, after this, "No," as Mark gave him a chilled bottle. "How are you holding up?" "Okay." I feel like I did back in Iraq, though. I guess I need to decompress a bit. Yeah, about that. I talked to Gunny this morning. He said he'd take care of everything if you wanted to go hang out in Vegas for a few days. Told me to give you his number. RK took 2 cards out of his pocket and gave them to Mark, saying, I may just do that. I have a few things to take care of here first, though. There's Gunny's number if you want to call. The other card is for a divorce lawyer. I do work for Michelle Hawkins. She's a real shark, hates cheaters with a passion. I took the liberty of calling her this morning. She said she's expecting you at her office at 8 a.m. sharp Monday morning. Mark nodded and said, thank you. For everything. RK yelled, hey, semper fi, bro. Do or die. At that, Mark chuckled. Aura, uttered by him. Once they had consumed their beer, RK got up and took a survey of the area. Looks like you got a bit of cleaning to do here, so I'll be on my way. See you, my friend. RK departed, saying, I'll be by later to get all the surveillance gear, and Mark started cleaning the house. He received a call from David Matt that afternoon. The older man picked up the phone and said, Mark, this is David Matt. Mark said, yes, Mr. Matt, what can I do for you? You can start by calling me David. I got your email and looked at the video. So did the board members. We're all in agreement with what you said in your letter, which I must say was quite impressive. Thank you, David, he replied. You're welcome. We also decided that Allison and Jake's jobs should end right away, especially since they're currently in custody. I'm going to personally take care of that by going to the county jail. There are a few more items. What is that? May I ask? Mark inquired. We believe it would be beneficial if you took a few days off to travel and decompress. Do you have a place you'd like to spend some time at? My friend offered to take care of me for a few days in Vegas. On Monday, I have a meeting with a divorce attorney. After that, I plan to leave. Vegas, really? Well, Vegas is the best place I can think of to take your mind off of everything. Mark, have a safe travel, and we'll talk to you on Monday of next week. I will, David, thank you. There are only a few more items. We unanimously agreed that with Jake's departure, you would be the best person for his job. Me? May I ask? Mark inquired. Yes, without a doubt. The board has been watching you for a while, and we're really impressed with the way you handled this. They're thrilled with your work, and I don't mind telling you that. That promotion comes with a nice raise and a few other perks, of course, but I think you deserve it. Thanks, David. Don't thank me at this time. You must first supervise the external audit that we will be hiring to be completed. We are bringing in auditors from outside the company to review everything that Jake has touched since arriving. You will report any findings, good, bad, or neutral, to me after they report directly to you. I believe that's a wise decision. Since sending that email, I found out that Jake has arranged for Allison to have sex with a few of our clients. Good God, David uttered. I'll leave that in your capable hands. Have a safe trip in the interim, and we'll see you on Monday of next week. See you then, David, Mark replied, thanks. Following David's call, Mark completed his Saturday chores of cleaning the house and mowing the yard. He then called Gunny Johnson and they caught up on everything. So, would you like to spend a few days and enjoy yourself a little? Gunny inquired. Yes, without a doubt. Come on over, and I'll show you around and get you situated in a comfortable room. And that's you on your own. Additionally, keep in mind that this is Las Vegas, not Bangkok. Over that, they laughed. I'll remember, Gunny, Mark remarked. See you Monday evening. After Gunny said, see you, Mark, RK stopped by to gather his gear. I wanted to provide you with a brief update. Officers raided Jake's home and discovered a gold mine. A ton of drugs, DVDs, sex toys, you name it. It looks like Jake was quite the creep. My friend who works for the force told me he wouldn't be shocked if they found more illicit items among all the stuff they seized. Damn, RK stayed for dinner, and Mark fell asleep shortly after, mentally and physically spent. The following day, he started packing up everything Allison had, hauling it all into the garage and deciding to wait to take it all to Goodwill until he was positive she was going to jail. At precisely 8 in the morning, he arrived at Michelle Hawkins's office and was escorted inside, where she reviewed his documentation and evidence and took notes while he spoke. She told him about California's divorce laws, how everything is usually divided equally because they are childless, that the house was his before they got married, that he would probably be able to keep it since he had already divided their bank accounts, that the court would probably give Allison the half that was still in their account, that her adultery could not be brought up in the divorce, that the judge would very likely take the criminal accusations against Allison into consideration in any order, and that it was highly unlikely that he would have to pay Allison any support while she is incarcerated, but that could change once she is released. I'll draw up the papers and have them served. I'll do everything I can to make this as painless as possible, Michelle stated. I'll give them to the judge if she signs them exactly as they are. After that, all you have to do is wait. Mark agreed, giving her a retainer for her work, and then, on his way home, he stopped by the county jail to inform Allison that he was going to file for divorce. Sitting at the table, he watched as they brought her out, looking gaunt in the orange jumpsuit that did nothing to accentuate her figure, and they picked up the handset so they could talk, with the thick plexiglass shield standing between them. Hello, Allison. Hi, Mark. I just wanted to let you know that I filed for divorce after seeing an attorney today. She said, I knew you would. When's your arraignment hearing? The prosecuting attorney is requesting that we be held without bail tomorrow morning, he informed her. That seems like it would be ideal. Tell me something, please. I want the real deal from God. What is that? May I ask? She inquired. How on earth did that happen to you? She cast an embarrassed glance down. At first, everything was going pretty well with the job. In every way, Jake appeared to be an ordinary executive. The real beginning of things came after Alan's death. Jake blamed you for his lack of promotion, which infuriated him. He mentioned that it was likely his father had arranged for you to be hired. That's crazy, Mark replied. Alan always said he hoped Jake would become the CEO one day. I know, she replied. It all started that weekend when we traveled to New York. We were having a good time drinking and dancing at a club with some of our clients, nothing too crazy. Yes, I did engage in some light flirting, but I didn't feel inappropriate. I felt great the next thing I knew, and before I knew it, I was in bed with 2 of the other guys. Jake entered afterward. The next morning, I realized what had happened, and I felt really guilty about it, she said after pausing for a moment. Jake then showed me some of his own photos and videos and threatened to make sure you got them, so I would have to comply with his wishes. So, he drugged you and I bet he blackmailed you, Mark said. She said, he did, adding, he told me about it later. It's not shocking that they discovered a ton of drugs in his apartment. Did he introduce you to Coca-Cola? Yes, and weed, and some other stuff, she said with a nod of her head. How many of our clients did you ultimately work with? Shrugging her shoulders, she said. I'm not sure, maybe a few. Mark shook his head. Jake set it all up, and I pretty much did the same whenever we went somewhere. I could tell from the video I took that you were quite enthusiastic about the concept. Drugging me, making me a Coca-Cola addict so Jake could have fun. Tell me, did the Henderson project really come up at dinner on Wednesday? No, she replied with a shake of her head, we were planning Friday's party. So, you pre-arranged everything like that? Allison gave a head nod. Yes, she muttered, I apologize, Mark. That's pretty much the first thing you said that I agree with, yes. Do you think you'll ever be able to let me go? Before responding, he laughed and said, not no, but hell no. God only knows how many other people you cheated on with that a-hole. After that, you and him planned to drug and beat me. You have lost your mind. And don't even try to make friends with me. She said, I hope it was all worth it to you. I understand, Mark. Allison, goodbye. He ended the call, watched her walk away with tears streaming down her cheeks, went home, packed, and left for Vegas, where he met up with Gunny Johnson and they had dinner, reminisced, and Gunny showed him around the casino floor and gave him some advice on how to play the tables. Mark noticed a pretty young brunette sitting on the bed when they walked in, and she got up as soon as they were inside. This is Candy, Mark, Gunny Johnson introduced herself, and she will be your guide here. Mark remarked, Gunny, this really isn't necessary. You're not serious, son. After everything your wife has put you through, this is precisely what you need. Unwind, enjoy yourself, and keep in mind that what occurs here stays here. At that, they all chuckled. Well, I've got to leave. Mark turned to Candy and said, You kids have fun, before turning to leave. Tell me, do you work as an escort? He started off. Prostitute? Candy inquired. Not anymore, thanks to Gunny. He got me out of a very bad situation, and thanks to him, I'm clean, going to school and working a real job. He told me a little bit about you and asked if I wouldn't mind spending some time with you, that's all. If you want, I'll leave and never bother you again. No, replied Mark. He was right. I could use some companionship right now, and you are a very lovely woman. Would you care to go out for a drink or something? That seems pleasant, she grinned. After going to the club and having a few drinks, they returned to his room where she spent the night supporting him in forgetting his problems and continued to talk and dance for a few hours. The following morning, he awoke to find her at his side. They then got dressed and had a shower together. I have classes today, but I can meet you back here tonight if you want, she replied. That sounds like a plan, he remarked. He went downstairs for breakfast after they shared a kiss before she left. After that, he strolled towards the casino to have a go at a few games. That afternoon, he took Gunny's advice and left with about $300 more in his pocket. He used it for that evening's show with Candy, dinner, and drinks. She once again shook his world. The remainder of the week proceeded largely in the same manner, and by Friday he was eager to get home and resume his life. Though she was sad to see him go, Candy understood. In the event that he needed to get in touch with her again, she provided him with her phone number and email address. Though he didn't think they would ever get serious, he liked her. She had her entire life ahead of her and was far younger than he was. Who knows, he thought, though? He smiled as he drove home, thoughts of Candy flitting through his mind. Upon arriving home, he read up on Allison and her friend's exploits. Following the prosecution's presentation of evidence, the judge ruled that they would all be detained without bond. Michelle also confirmed to him that divorce papers had been served to Allison. Michelle claims that Allison signed them right away and that the paperwork was submitted to the court. He would be permanently free of her in 6 months. When he arrived at work the next Monday, everything he owned had been moved into Jake's former office. Everyone wished him luck in his new role and welcomed him back. As he got used to his new workspace, he met the outside auditors. After settling them in, he presented Marcia Bodin, his new assistant. She had joined the company a few years prior, so he had known her from then on. He liked Marcia, knew she was married, had worked well under previous managers. She was extremely cautious not to bring up his predicament, even though she was aware of it. During the audit, numerous anomalies in Jake's documentation were discovered. To begin with, he had falsified his expense report for a number of trips that he and Allison had taken. The auditors later discovered that Jake had improperly handled the accounts of some of their clients. After the SEC was notified of this right away, Jake was soon charged federally. Over the next few months, Mark and David worked very hard to tidy up the mess that Jake had left behind. Thankfully, their prompt action saved them from losing any clients, but they had to have multiple awkward conversations with understandably upset other executives. Mark, in the meantime, communicated with Candy primarily via email. She eventually told him that she had made a new friend at school and that they were really serious about one another. He wished her well, not astonished. Simultaneously, the trials of Allison and Jake continued with new charges and back-and-forth motions. Mark was forced to testify against his spouse and her accomplices. He told her lawyer, "I may not be required to, but I want to," in response to her defense team's attempts to dissuade him from testifying against his own wife. "Besides, in a few weeks, she won't be my wife anymore." The jury was taken aback both by his testimony and by the presentation of the Friday night video that Mark had taken. The day finally arrived for the jury to declare their verdicts. As Allison, Jake, and the other 3 men were brought in, Mark and David were seated in the courtroom and observed. They were all unable to give Mark a direct look. The trial had turned into a bit of a media circus by this point. When the judge called the court to order, she inquired as to whether the jury had reached a verdict. The foreman declared they had as he got to his feet. As the judge listed the charges, which included assault and kidnapping conspiracy, everyone watched anxiously. In addition, Jake was charged with other offenses related to drugs discovered in his townhouse and explicit pictures and videos he had of other women. Every charge brought against them was found to be true against them all. The 5 conspirators who had been found guilty were led from the courtroom as the judge scheduled the day for their sentencing. David and Mark left, swerving around the group of reporters who were shoving cameras in their faces. After 10 or so days, they received their sentence. The judge essentially threw the book at them, making it obvious that he was deeply disgusted with all 5 of them. Even though their sentences were the lightest, Jake's 3 friends still faced 20 years behind bars. Jake received a 50-year prison sentence for his crimes, while Allison received a 25-year to life sentence. In addition, the SEC would file federal charges against him, which would be heard in federal court. While Jake just looked down in shame as he was taken away, Allison broke down in tears as she was led out of the courtroom. Nevertheless, Jake's incarceration came to an end approximately half a year later when he was discovered beheaded in the shower. It appears that he offended the wrong people, who were offended by his arrogant demeanor. Mark was reviewing some paperwork in his office 1 month after the sentencing when Marsha buzzed him over the intercom. Mark looked at the last name. "Mr. Hurley, there's a Dr. Kristen Marcus here to see you." He ordered her to come in. When the door opened, Mark noticed a stylish blonde walk into his office. She wore a skirt that hung just below her knees, and her hair fell below her shoulders. She came up to him and held out her hand, grinning. "It's great to finally meet you, Mr. Hurley," she replied. He asked her to take a seat after shaking her hand. "Please, call me Mark. Would you like something to drink? Coffee, tea?" As his assistant left the office, Mark asked Marsha to get them each a cup of coffee and said, "Coffee would be wonderful, black please. And please call me Kristen." Mark then sat down. Mark said, "Marcus," glancing at her. "Are you any relation to Alan? His daughter, perhaps?" She shook her head, grinning. "No, I'm his niece." "I see. I'm surprised I haven't met you before. I thought I'd met pretty much everyone in Alan's family. I've been quite busy. I was in France when Uncle Alan died and wasn't able to make it back for his funeral." "So what can I do for you?" asked the man. "Hello and welcome to storytelling. I just wanted to meet the man who took my a-hole of a cousin down. I take it there's not much love lost between the 2 of you." She nodded. "No, none," she mutely uttered. "I'm just glad to see he's finally been forced to pay for his crimes. I'm really very sorry about what he did to you. From what I know about you, you didn't deserve any of it, and I'm sorry. I've heard a lot about you from my uncle. So, I see you're a doctor. Are you a medical doctor?" "No, I have a PhD in business and economics. I teach over at UCLA. My uncle and I shared a lot of the same interests, but I'm more geared towards academics. And no, I'm not interested in moving into the corner office upstairs," Mark chuckled. After a bit more conversation, she said she had to return to her work. To be honest, Mark was interested in this woman and didn't want the conversation to end. "Listen, Kristen, I'd love to continue this discussion with you, say over dinner. That is, if you don't mind being seen in public with a lowly MBA. She grinned and her eyes sparkled. She gave him a card with her phone number and address and said, "There's nothing lowly about being an MBA, and I'd love to be seen with you in public. Dinner would be great. How about Red Lobster tonight at 7 o'clock? Mark took her card and said, "Red Lobster it is." "It's been great meeting you, Mark. I'll see you then. I'll pick you up at 6:30 if that works," she said as she left. That night, Kristen told Mark that Jake had attempted to sexually assault her after her 18th birthday. She avoided Alan and his family as much as possible out of embarrassment and fear of being held accountable. Because of Jake's actions, she also avoided relationships with men and went to therapy for months during her time in college. He told her about Allison's incident and his encounter with Jake. Not surprised, but shocked, was Kristen. Kristen and Mark dated for a few months before falling in love. "I'm so sorry. You deserve much better, Mark," Kristen said. When he proposed to her, she almost threw him to the ground and showered him with kisses. Mark asked, "I take it that's a yes," when she eventually released him. "Maureen, that's a hell yes. Now carry me to bed and ravish me properly." Mark nodded to his future wife and carried her upstairs. Yes, he thought to himself, everything was looking good. Please feel free to express your opinions in the space provided for comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.